Welcome to Darkly Lit, where we venture into the creepy house past the train tracks and look beyond the dead animals locked in the basement. I'm your host, Kayla King, and to my right is my husband, David King.
I don't want to be a coat rack. I don't like these antlers!
Will you guys adopt me?
That's the plan.
And our future adopted child.
My last name is technically already King's.
Yeah, I know.
Plural.
I should just start introducing us as the three kings. I'm your host, the first king, Kayla King. To my right is David King. And then our third king
is the heir apparent.
Jesse Sade Reyes.
It always sounds weird to me when because I know it's my nickname and it's just as much as my name as Jesse is, but it's always weird for me when I hear Jesse Sade Reyes. I'm like, oh, that's right, that's what you do.
Yeah, I don't know how to introduce you. It's a form of habit when you ever write someone's name down professionally or like for a letter, first name, nickname in quotations.
Yeah, and then last name. I know. It's just for me, like Sade has always been such a separated, like an entirely separate identity to like my actual name.
Okay.
Should we just call you Sade on this then, or
yeah, Sade's fine. Well, that's what I go by on the Witching Hour.
Okay,
fair enough.
So,
all right.
Our third.
Can we? But if we're gonna keep the Three Kings moniker,
yeah,
we might have to at least drop the Reyes thing.
I do sometimes like to go just drop the ES and go by Ray.
Oh, nice. Just Ray.
Sade Ray.
Sade Ray.
No, goodness.
That's your DJ name.
At all.
That's your DJ name.
Well, to make things even more confusing, I post work under the pen name Dead N, and sometimes I use Dead Ray, so like Dead King.
Ooh, that's
Ooh.
I'll just call it Sade for now. Okay.
Yeah, let's just go with Sade.
Our third king, Sade.
There we go. Our third king. We're gonna bring, and that coming December, we're gonna deliver gold, frankincense, and myrrh to some baby in a hay trough. Anyway,
yeah. So that's how I'll begin it.
Because a star told us to.
Since I'm now a king, I can say, I will introduce this show and then say, we are the Three Kings. I am your first host, Kayla King, and then go through the whole spiel. And
everybody gets to hear us talk about how we're going to introduce ourselves in future episodes. Hey, King the First. Which is weird because I'm technically, you took my name, so you'd
No, you're King
I'm King the First.
Yeah.
You're born first. Well.
That's true, I am the oldest.
So, actually, in terms of birth order, that would be true. You'd be King the First, Sade be King the Second, and I'd be King the Third.
Fellow rulers of Orientar, what are we reading? What have we read to discuss in this dark and horrid library?
So, we read a short story called The Quiet Boy by Nick Antosca, and this will serve as the basis for an upcoming movie in 2020 called Antlers.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to do a little bit of research into Nick Antosca, and I did not realize this when I chose this story. I swear.
Well, we chose the story as a group essentially because we're all curious about the movie.
Yeah,
exactly. We knew it was the basis for the movie. We didn't.
I should have recognized the name though because I've been neck deep in this before. So
Nick Antosca is known for being the creator and showrunner of Channel Zero. However, I also realized he created and showran the series The Act, which I've heard is really good.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense. Like it's, I think it's supposed to be an anthology series, but I know one of the stories is based off the story of oh my gosh. I just know the documentary Mommy Dead and Dearest about Gypsy Rose and how she killed her mother.
Oh, yeah.
And that is a fascinating story, and I've heard that it's been portrayed pretty well on this TV show. But he's done... He's wrote and produced a lot of work. Like, he actually produced the horror series Hannibal, which is a Brian Fuller show, and it was actually pretty good.
That's been on my list for the longest time to watch.
So I watched the first few episodes when it came out, and I struggled to watch it because it is a bit too gory. It was a bit too gory for me at the time. As an adult, like now, who has watched a lot more horror movies and seen a lot more, I think I can handle it better if I watched it again. Because from what I saw, it was good. It was a fascinating story. And also I really like Brian Fuller's shows. Like he did Pushing Up Daisies and as well as American Gods. So it's like it's like
Dead Like Me.
He did Dead Like Me. I love Dead Like Me. I was so ecstatic by this. So when I heard Hannibal was coming into a show, I'm like, this sounds so good, and my stomach just couldn't handle it. But I know Sade will love it.
I've had multiple people who are like, "This is your show. Why aren't you watching this?" And I'm just like, "I'll get to it eventually."
I'm probably somewhere in the middle.
So
on that.
It's hard because I'm not, in terms of Nick Antosca's work, his the shows that he has worked on can be hit or miss.
In terms of Channel Zero, more power to you if you enjoy it, but not a fan. People who know me know I very publicly stated how I feel about Channel Zero as a whole, which is I don't think it's very good at all, and just completely misrepresents what a lot of the original source material was, and mine's source material that could have been really interesting into kind of very generic modern horror schlock. But again, your mileage may vary. I just, that's how I feel. It's okay to like things. Objectively, I think it's not very good.
Yeah. Again, and this is true of a lot of writers. Like I mentioned to David recently, I won't say out loud which author and which book, but I read one book this year that was amazing. It was probably my favorite book of the year. And then I read another book by this same author, and it was just so blah. I wasn't too fond of it. Which, again, I think this is the case for a lot of writers. Like, sometimes your work's going to be good, sometimes it's going to be bad. We actually came across that with, what's his name? Nathaniel, we read the Electra Boner. Nathaniel Lewis.
Oh,
we loved his short story. It was so amazing, and then we were just...
And then we read the Electric Boner, and we're like,
Yeah, so... But let's talk about this one work, The Quiet Boy. Who wants to give the summary?
I could.
Okay.
If you don't mind. I have a question real quick.
Sure.
Before we get into the summary, when was this written? Do you know?
2019.
This is new.
This is really new.
Interesting. Okay, I didn't realize Nick Antosca was still writing basically creepypasta. Because the best way I can sum this up is it's basically a creepypasta story.
Mm-hmm. I definitely got that feeling going through it.
It's like a well-polished creepypasta story, but it reads like a creepypasta story. You know?
Yes, I had the same feeling too.
So the book follows a oh my gosh, I cannot remember her first name, Miss Gray. Our teacher.
Wasn't it Julia?
Julia,
yes.
Julia Gray, who is a teacher who is in a town called, it was Rexford,
West Virginia.
She's a teacher in a town called Rexford, West Virginia. It's kind of a wrong side of the tracks kind of place in general. And she takes particular notice of this one boy in her class who seems particularly poor and troubled. The titular quiet boy. Mm-hmm. When she sets up a short story sort of writing thing in order to challenge the students, she gets really interested in what he is writing, and not only writing but drawing, and begins to wonder if it's reflective of his life at home. And when she starts to get into start peering into his life and trying to figure out why he seems so troubled and what it is motivating the sort of darker aspects of his story and his personality, she gets a lot more than she bargained for when she realizes that something terrible has happened to his father and his brother, something terrible and supernatural and involving antlers. Antlers! Like the movie! And then a lot of people die and some stuff happens.
Okay,
Sorry, I mean, I don't want to go through the entire story summary because we're going to break it all down here anyway. It's a short story. I got through it in maybe half an hour at the most. It didn't take me that long to read.
I would say it took me a half hour as well.
Yeah, same. I read it earlier today.
Me too. That's fair because I wanted it fresh in my mind when we talked.
Yeah,
about it.
I read it last night. Again, same thing. I wanted to have it fresh in my brain, but I knew I was going to be busy today for work, so I was like, I'll just do it the day before or yesterday.
Yeah.
So that way I can get it done. Okay, what's our general opinion of this? What is our...
I know I wish I had read this before knowing it was going to be a movie, especially because I had the visuals from the trailer in my head. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to keep those out as I read, but that was very difficult. Uh-huh. With keeping it with the thought in my mind, like, oh, this is going to be a movie. As I was reading it, I almost felt like, man, this was written to hopefully pitch as a movie. It's kind of, but I have to wonder if is that just I only feel that way because I know it is being made a movie.
I think another thing too, it is written by someone who does work in television.
Yeah,
this is someone who's already got connections.
He does, and he's been working for quite a long time too. So I mean, at least 10 years, I want to say.
Wow.
So he has connections, so he knows his ways, and I think for someone, he is a writer for a lot of television too, so I assume that it would reflect in his writing. But who's to say that he intentionally wrote it for television or for a movie? He could have just written it on as his own, but I have no doubt writing for television probably influenced his writing.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe one of the reasons I felt that way, and this is probably because he has that experience writing for TV, all the visual elements in this story were very well described.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And that's, I think, maybe that add to that feeling of this is a pitch almost.
He used it, and ironic, he does Channel Zero, and he doesn't really seem to grasp how to adapt.
He was a co-creator. I mean,
co-creator,
and also you got to realize this could be. There's a lot of people that I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Fair enough.
I mean, and I don't really say that as a criticism. That's just the feeling that I got. Overall, I mean, I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I thought it was a fun enough read for 30 minutes of entertainment.
Mm-hmm. I actually haven't seen the trailer, so I had no problems keeping it out.
Oh, okay. I've seen it multiple times now because I go to the movies too often.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's true.
See, now I'll be interested to watch the trailer and see, okay, I don't know if it's one I'm particularly chomping at the bit to see after having read the story, but, because the story is fine. That's the biggest compliment I can give the story. It's fine. Mm-hmm. It did what it set out to do. I started reading it. I became engaged. Even the parts I was kind of I was still, I was along for the ride. And when I was done, I was like, well, it was fine. I enjoyed the parts of it I enjoyed. Mm-hmm. Do I think it's amazing? Not particularly. It treads a lot of ground I've read time and again in creepypasta stories, but it's, for what it's worth, I think the story does a serviceable job, with what it's trying to do. And I guess we'll get more into the details of that as we go. But overall, it's fine.
I think for sure it's well written. There's a lot of scenes that actually I was got me more involved. I especially the scene where Julia goes up to the house is very anxious and tense, and it did keep me kind of wondering, okay, what's going to happen? And then there's a part of me that thought, okay, it's going to be like this. I did not expect 2 dead bodies. I really did not expect 2 dead bodies, to be honest. I was expecting just supernatural creatures from the get-go. Mm-hmm. But it was a tense moment, and I did like how she found the 2 dead bodies, and I was like, oh, wow, this went to a place I didn't expect. Damn. Yeah,
that was a good bit. That's when you realize, oh man, all bets are off, because they're not werewolves. And it's not that on the nose, you know?
And that was a good subversion. Again, it's a lot of good writing. I think, for the most part, I like a lot of it. It's weird. I think I love the realistic parts of it for the most... Actually, yeah, that's the best way to describe it. I love the realistic parts of it. The supernatural bits are to me. I think I wasn't too fond of having a supernatural twist, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I would have there is a point where the kid is at her house and she's watching over him because just the cops have discovered there's 2 dead bodies here.
Yeah.
And the cops are still exploring the house, and they call Julia and they're like, Julia, there's dead animals locked in this basement. There's a lot of them, and they're recent. And that's when you're like, at first I was like, oh shit, that'd be so cool if it turned out this kid is just insane and he killed his family, and he's I was hoping it would go that route, and then now she's stuck here with this like child that's like not quite right in the head and is like basically Michael Myers, I was like, oh, I wanted to go this route, but then it went the supernatural route instead.
Well, I knew it was going to go the supernatural route because of the trailer. So, but yeah, I do like that idea more. I think that would have been more fun.
I wouldn't even mind the supernatural route if, say, for example, the kid had some sort of spooky power with him. You know, that would have been fine. Like just something minor, because they already implied the supernatural thing with all the stuff that Julie saw in the house,
in the living room. Yeah,
that could have been interesting. Like it's like the ghosts or
like the whisper behind her and all that in all caps.
Yeah,
I think I was fine with the supernatural stuff even up to the end. Yeah. The one like little detail that like stuck out. And I was like, well, I don't like that at all. It was the whole, like, oh, this supernatural force is so strong, it's jamming my phone signal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple, like, it doesn't feed on human flesh, it feeds on pain. I'm like...
That's a little bit of a conclusion to jump to.
Well, and also it's like, I don't know why you're saying this, why?
That's, again, it's moments like that there were certain moments in here where I'm just read, well, this is a creepypasta.
Yeah. The whole feeding on pain, it's edgy, but I was like, that one didn't bother me as much as like the phone one. I was like, you know what? You be you.
The phone
you be
one,
edgy.
Yeah. Well, okay. The phone, like moments in the story that I liked was like the realization that the house was boarded up and the boy was living in a tent in the backyard.
Yes.
That was a really good detail. I liked that. It was both sad and intriguing.
Well, and another thing too is this is a very realistic situation. There are a lot of teachers who will have that kid, like will have that quiet child who clearly is from the wrong side of the tracks, is like starving, like clearly malnourished, and it comes from a broken home, and they just kind of get ignored because they're not sure what to do.
Yeah,
like this.
Like that. Like I said, I just feel like details that stick out to me in terms that were good, like tend to be the ones that are more grounded in reality, and even the supernatural stuff was pretty cool. There was a certain point where it kind of fell, and this is just coming from someone who is a self-proclaimed expert on a dead genre. It started to really go into stuff I've read time and again in creepypasta.
Yeah.
The entities themselves, the phone jamming, the feeding on pain, the kind of druggy kid across the street who tells her you shouldn't go there. The fact that our protag, despite her better judgment, continues to press into the house when she could easily like realize the place is abandoned. Like in other scenarios, if you'd seen the tent in the backyard and saw the kid clearly doing this thing, you would walk away and then like call social services or something, right?
I assume so, but
we have to find a way to get her in there so she could see the scary. So and like the details in the house were fine, but even going through the house felt very kind of creepypasta-ish, especially like the weird smudged pentagram on the table. I'm like, oh my god, this is so and like I do want to talk about the entities themselves, that show up. Oh, the fact that they can only be warded off with light was kind of,
by the way,
I felt a little bit thrown in. I don't know. Look, in its own logic, like everything was pretty sound. It's just as someone who is so jaded with creepypasta, it's like, yeah, this is kind of a little bit of this is by the numbers. Or at least very, very heavily used tropes. So,
question: were you guys able to figure out what the monster was?
Oh yeah,
what they are.
Oh yeah.
I know. Yeah, I know you were able to figure out.
The moment so Kayla and I hadn't seen each other all day, and the moment I got home, we basically looked at each other, and I was like,
"Don't say. Did you figure it out? Like what they are?"
I just assumed they were Wendigos because the antlers.
Yep,
Wendigos.
They're absolutely Wendigos.
There's no doubt in my mind they're Wendigos.
Yeah, it didn't hit me actually until this morning. I was like, wait. They're Wendigos.
Even though, I mean, like, the traditional, like, pure sense of the Wendigo don't actually have antlers. That's, like, a depiction that came from, like, people's art. But, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting that that's become so prevalent. I actually did my research after I read this story because I knew this wasn't. I knew it was a more modern thing. Like, it never came up in a lot of the folklore I'd read before about Wendigos.
Yeah, it's definitely much more.
Yeah,
a modern. It's an implant.
Yeah, what's with the whole antler thing? There's a lot of stories about the source, but a lot of people point to a filmmaker named Larry Fessenden. Yeah, supposedly he was inspired by like certain Wendigo stories. Like he conflated a bunch of things in his head and actually made a short movie in 2001 called Wendigo.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's kind of one of the earliest examples of like the Wendigo being depicted as an antlered deer-like monster. And it just kind of lodged itself in the cultural consciousness after that. A lot of places, like you said, art, people often depicted it that way in art. Other people went with it too. The Wendigo had that look in Pathfinder, which helped exacerbate that. Pathfinder's been around for about 10 years. So that helped, like, there's all kinds of ways, but it's just interesting that that's now sort of the modern accepted, like, if it's got antlers, it's probably a Wendigo.
Yeah.
Like I'm working, I meant to finish it for Halloween, but I didn't, but I'm working on a doll where the doll's story is she's in the process of being possessed by a Wendigo, and I've sculpted this. I didn't want to do just like an antler, like an elk and like antlers head skull. So I sculpted a bear skull instead, but I'm going to give it the antlers because I have to give it the antlers.
I think that the one eerie thing, and I think is the best decision in this whole, I think the best choice that the writer made for this story was having 2 dead bodies in the house. I'm not gonna lie, I really like that detail. That was like, oh, I did not see that coming. And then also
yeah, I agree, that was a good detail, especially after feeling the activity in the house.
Especially even if you go in and thinking, okay, I've seen the trailer, they're clear Wendigos, okay, they're Wendigo. Why are there 2 dead bodies? Aren't they supposed to possess people? Well, they have no one to possess. What's going on? But then I thought, because for those who don't know, one of the things that Wendigos do is they take over people's bodies and use them for violent cannibalistic purposes. But that isn't to say it has to be alive people. So wouldn't that be twisted if it's like they've been using the corpses of these people? That's
what I had thought at first, because like what I understand of like the traditional Wendigo, and like I could be off and confusing it with other Wendigo versions, but it's you can become either like possessed or you become a Wendigo yourself. So I always understood it's that one body that then morphs, and that's what I thought it was. And then it's like, oh, corpses, and they're old, huh?
Yeah.
And so I think they switched it up, made their own lore in that sense. Is like, oh, it's a separate entity of sorts.
It is kind of tied to the entities are kind of tied to the corpses though, because once the corpses left the house, they were able to go start massacring everything.
Because that was something the boy kept saying. It's like, why'd you take them out of the house? As long as they're in the house, they were safe. So
I didn't like that because it explained how it was possible for this one child to keep these 2 terrible entities restrained in the house.
And the twisted part is realizing that they're more or less created from the souls or the spirits or the egos or whatever of these 2, of his father and his brother, but they're something else entirely.
And I think that's still a hint that like both the brother and the father, at least definitely the father, must have had violent tendencies or had a dark soul, because that's what Wendigos are known to be tend to appeal to, if that's if I recall.
Maybe. I mean, it could also be that the father was I don't know how he didn't really explain it. I felt like the father was supposed to, like, the implication I thought was that the father was the one who was doing this stuff to summon the Wendigos, but I'm not sure.
No, I think way the kid explained it was that the father did some kind of rituals so that when he and the younger brother died, they would come back as Wendigos.
Yeah, but why just him and the younger brother and not the middle brother, not the older brother?
Yeah, that wasn't explained. If it was like,
that's kind of
that's up for speculation.
Yeah. And I just want to say, because I mentioned it earlier, I don't think the antlers image is even a bad image. I think it's really cool. It's important to know that it is a modern thing. It's not a super ancient thing, and you can actually trace sort of its source origins back to certain things. It's sort of a cultural pastiche, but it still happened. And I think there was some new stuff here, and the antlers were kind of the giveaway that this was what they were. And then that and the ultra violent, like, murdering stuff for the sheer joy of it thing, the depravity.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at like like antlers, like they're fucking cool. Like it's still a really cool like image. It's unsettling.
Yeah.
So I don't mind them too much.
I'm not saying I don't mind them. It's just it falls into that realm of me kind of going, oh no.
I did enjoy like the way the child indigo was described, and like it's hopping around and like sucking on its hand or thumb or whatever. Because I don't see a lot of like babu monsters too often.
I do enjoy babu monsters.
It's nice to see a babu monster. Like this is clearly a young child, like 5 years old, and it's or maybe even younger. Like if they're sucking on their thumb though, like they're
well, he's sucking on his like all of his fingers. He's got like a hand in his mouth all the time.
So
yeah,
he could be like 2 or 3 for all we know.
That's true.
Yeah, I think if the Wendigos were a bit more flesh and blood in that, you know, they're not blocking phone signals or floating over the ground, I would have enjoyed that a bit more.
Yeah.
Because Wendigos are like it's what's the word? Starving, but not another word for like starving.
Famished?
Famine, yeah.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
kind of
famine spirits.
Famine and greed is kind of what their base is. And for me to experience those things, you have to be very earthbound.
Good point.
So that's why if you're gonna give me some Wendigos, I want them to be flesh, cold flesh, but still flesh nonetheless. That's how I feel about it. But I mean, overall, like I don't feel like I wasted 30 minutes having read it.
Yeah,
I'm more curious about what they're gonna take from this and keep in the movie and what they're gonna change.
I'm curious how they're going to use this to pad out the movie for.
Yeah, I know. Like I noticed already in the trailer, Lucas is telling his story, like he's reading it to the class.
Oh.
And instead of 3 wolves, he stuck with 3 bears.
Oh no.
Which I think is fine. I didn't see why it'd be changed to wolves in the story.
I also have another question. What do we think of Julia Gray as a character? Because she's our narrator, our first person.
She's all right.
She's all right. She's very stand-in, like just, you know, this is how we think maybe most people would respond, wanting to help a child and protect it. I noticed a couple details that I found a little interesting, and I think the writer was trying to make this apparent. She works for Teach America, or Teach for America, which I thought was an interesting choice, because Teach for America it does not matter. You don't need to have any teaching experience whatsoever, and you can be Teach for America. And a lot of actually teachers tend to be like actual teachers who are paid and went through school to get the degree to teach, kind of look down on those who do that, I've heard, or they're a little like iffy about them. Another thing too is she also said she's not sure if teaching is for her, but she's good with kids. So and she cares about them. So there's this, it shows that she has a care for kids, but maybe teaching's not for her. But then later on, there's this whole decision of it's her life versus the boy's life. And they're like, give him to us. And we'll let you go free. And she's basically deciding between should I or should I not. And I don't know. I never saw her as this character that would debate in the like whether her life is more important than a child's.
See, but I don't know. Yeah, like I don't. Well, I mean, it's implied that she likes the kids, but she doesn't really like the job so much. And like that's fine. It's like I kind of agree. I agree with Said. It's just she seemed kind of she's just kind of there, and the circumstances of her job gave her enough. Gave her enough believability to be there as a person and have it make sense that she would get into the situation she does. Everything felt like a way to ease into a plausible situation of why is there this kid that has a 2 relatives that are now Wendigos. So
I just find it interesting he chose Teach for America rather than she's just a new teacher. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, yeah, and I think that helps. Yeah, you're right. That kind of helps reinforce the idea too that she's working with kids who are less enfranchised. You know?
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, that's true because that's the idea behind Teach for America.
Poor town in West Virginia. I mean, yeah.
And that is the idea for Teach for America, is that you're put into schools that are, or you teach at schools that are disadvantaged or are not doing as well. And
little rundown.
I thought that,
underfunded.
like, we know
Yes.
she's like, but she's also, at the very beginning, it says she's 23 and she's only been teaching for 2 months.
Yeah,
I
she's
thought
brand new.
that we would see more of that, like her inexperience and like in her way of like handling Lucas and say whatnot.
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't really get too much of that.
Yeah.
Me
I don't know
neither.
if that was just a thrown out detail. But
She didn't have. She had some character, but she didn't have a ton.
No.
yeah. And then Kayla mentioning like you didn't see her as a character that would debate about whether she would, sacrifice this child for her own.
That's the thing. I don't know. All I've seen from her is that she goes above and beyond for this one kid. She even says in like monologue is like, isn't this what a teacher's supposed to be? Isn't this what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, and that's fine because she's still brand new. Maybe she still has this idealistic idea of like how she's going to help children, So and that's why she put so much energy into helping this one kid.
Right.
Yeah.
And when it came to her being like, shit, do I throw this kid out and save myself? Like that, though, fine for me because honestly, we're human. If it comes, unless it is your own child, your own blood, I think most people would be like debating on some level, I want to save myself more than I really want to be a good person right now.
Yeah.
If it came to,
I get that. One of my main things with this story anyway is that no one in it really has a lot of character. They're just kind of there.
Yeah.
The sheriff is just kind of there. Okay, this really stuck out to me as a weird thing. Julia's landlady, the woman who owns the house that she's living in the cabin behind, is given a weird amount of detail for like a couple paragraphs, and there's some personality quirks that are implied, and they're just they felt kind of thrown in, and then we like never see her again except we hear her being killed off screen.
Yeah.
So like, why put all of that in there if we're not ever gonna get to know her as a character? It's just kind of like, here she is, and here's what she's like, and then she's gone after that scene, and then she dies gruesomely off camera or off page. We don't see her die. We only hear her die.
I think it's the idea.
Like, it's just why try to develop this character if you're not going to do anything beyond that, like, paragraph or that segment? I don't know. It was just a weird, it was a weird detail. It felt like, oh, this is going to build to something. This character is going to actually factor in a little bit more, but the character development felt a little clumsy. Mm-hmm. And then she was there. I'm like, so we had clumsy character development for someone who dies off screen.
It's just, I think that one of the tricky parts, and I think a lot of, I don't want to say newbie writers, but this can be kind of true. There's this idea, like, if I give the character a little bit of description, it will make you feel for them, so when something bad happens, it's, like, much more tragic, and it's like,
I felt nothing.
No, same.
I did not.
Not even
I
for
didn't
that
feel
poor
scared.
boy.
I didn't feel scared. I felt bad for the kid.
Oh, I absolutely felt bad for the kid.
That's the only person I felt bad for, which is kind of to be expected because he's been through some shit. But like everybody else was just cannon fodder. They were just there to move the story along. That's
even Rachel, even Julia.
Yeah.
Even Julia.
Even Joel.
So, I mean, I think that's where my kind of eh-ness at the story goes, because think about creepypasta protagonists.
Yeah.
And then don't, because they don't matter.
I only have a few questions for this. Unless do we have anything else to
I don't know if there's much more to say about this. I think we covered it pretty well.
I am ready for questions.
Let's do these questions.
Okay, so I'm going to begin with the joke question from Slime Beast, because
Hey.
I have a way to reinterpret this.
Yeah.
And he says this exactly how I am saying. Why the boy be quiet?
Because he don't like the antlers.
No, actually, that got me thinking. And here's something to discuss. Why is the boy quiet? Or rather, why hasn't he said anything to anyone? Why didn't he go to? Why didn't he talk to an adult or went to another teacher and again sees his family dead? Why didn't he?
Well, I mean, even Julia answers that in somewhere in there where no one would have believed him.
Yeah.
It's true.
So why even say anything?
My brother and my dad are dead, and they're now cannibal spirits.
Well, even then, like he could have said like they're my
But
dad
he knew if they were let out of the house that they're gonna go kill a lot of people.
Oh,
That's
good
the other
point.
thing too.
Good point. And then
I mean, the logic of this mythos is relatively sound. He's quiet enough because he's like, I don't want to bring this on anyone else.
and he doesn't want to be noticed either.
Yeah.
too. And then again, as mentioned before, he is basically from the poorest of the poor, and those kids usually kind of get brushed off to the side, and it's sad that happens, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't know. That why the boy be quiet.
That's why the
boy be quiet.
Okay, so and then I got 2 questions from Bringer. Thank you, Bringer. It has good viewpoints from the teacher side, but do you think some of it is a little blunt? I did actually ask him what he meant by blunt, and he's like, why would a teacher be so quick to go over to a kid's house, or should have been taken more time for her to decide to do it?
Well, at this point, she's already been watching the kid for like 2 months.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're just coming into the story when she's finally deciding to really approach him, especially after reading this story.
Yeah, and then this is the first time he does something, because what starts it too is she sees that he's putting a lot of effort into this story, and then also is drawing, and then she actually looks into a program where he can draw and would be funded, and the only thing that she realizes is something wrong is when she says, oh, you're gonna need your father's signature, and he says, I changed my mind, I'm not interested anymore. And she's like, are you sure? He's like, I'm not interested, I'm sorry, and just leaves. Just that one mention of, you're gonna need your parents' signature, and
Or I'm gonna need to talk to your father.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think
because there's really no way he's going to get out of that situation without it eventually being revealed that there are 2 corpses in his house. You know?
And I that probably, again, like any person who would see that, their first thought is, oh, he's in an abusive situation.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he really is in an abusive situation, but it's not what they think. So, I mean, I don't...
Eh.
I think, again, I'm agreeing with Sade. I think this is, the time it took for her. Again, she's been watching him for 2 months, and this is the first time.
Yeah, I didn't really think about the logic of that, but yeah, the pacing didn't bother me in that sense.
Actually,
It was more the characterization, but it didn't bother me. It's just kind of bland.
Actually, that's what Bringer puts up. What do you feel about the pacing of the story?
Pacing was actually okay.
I actually thought the pacing was really well done in this. Again, the way that it was written for her going to the house and then stumbling upon the dead bodies, I think that was actually really... There was a lot of, nervous, anxious moments that I really liked. And, fearful moments that it's like, oh, something is not right about this house. And, it's just... Again, there's a couple of creepypasta beats, but there's actually other parts that I was like, oh, what's going on here?
I think the pacing was fine. I think there was a little bit of padding in a couple interactions with characters that in the end didn't add to the story, like the woman who owns the house or the fellow teacher who was making comments to her.
Yeah.
I feel like that didn't need to be there.
Well,
but at the end, the pacing was fine. If we're gonna call this story a creepypasta, I think it's a well-written creepypasta.
I stand by what I said at the beginning. It's a well-written creepypasta, but it's a creepypasta.
I think that, wasn't the teacher, the purpose of the teacher was to give her a little bit more insight and then also say, I think that's his only pair of clothes? Because she actually buys him clothes.
Yeah.
Oh, and he was so excited about them.
So
I know.
nice.
That part pulls at your heartstrings.
It does. That was such a nice thing for her to do. That's one of the reasons why I thought, okay, why would she be debating like this? Because it's she's doing so much for this boy. She's really pulling for him.
I do appreciate.
Well, I mean, it's one thing when you think all you have to do is buy the kid some clothes and reach out to the parents and then maybe call someone like child services to take it over after you've done the initial.
Good point.
It's another thing to sacrifice yourself in defending some child that also don't actually know at all.
That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. I could see that.
Oh. I mean, that's just me maybe being cynical, but yeah.
Yeah. Those are the only questions. Do we have any final thoughts on this story?
I'll be interested to see. I don't know if I'm particularly jonesing to see this movie, but I'll be curious to see how it gets adapted from this story and what kind of liberties it has to take in order to make this a feature-length film.
I mean, there's been a lot of movies that have been based off short stories.
Yeah, but...
And for the most part, it does have to do with... It's not just that one short story. It just gets more and more developed, and it becomes something bigger. Like,
Go ahead.
I was trying to cite an example, but actually my example's not a really good one, so...
Fair enough.
Well, the movie's is being directed by Scott Cooper, but the reason I was interested, just based on the trailer, I'm still really into Wendigos. Like I said, I'm working on a Wendigo doll. I've actually got a story that has a Wendigo that I should have written fucking years ago. But it's being produced by Guillermo del Toro.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So that gives me a glimmer of hope that it'll at least be decent and fun to watch in theaters.
Yeah, well, that's totally viable. I mean, keep in mind, Guillermo was also involved in the Scary Stories movie.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed that one. I realized it wasn't necessarily the best movie, but it was. No, but it was still
a fun experience, especially because we got to see it with good friends.
Yeah, that made that whole experience was a lot better because of us all getting to see it.
I do have a question for David. If say you had read this story a couple of years ago, just as another creepypasta floating online, would it have potential for the Midnight Marinara treatment?
Maybe. I don't know. I might have actually considered it a few years ago for Midnight Marinara.
Actually, this isn't.
This would have been a good one for that. It's kind of places that are non-visual that it could have totally worked.
And also, actually, the more I think about it, this actually would be a really good one because, like, there's a lot of creepy sounds you can add. There's not like 20 million characters. I feel like the only part that I think would be tricky is her going into the house. I think that would probably be shorter.
Yeah, I think it would be that thing where she's going through the house. I can picture it now, going through the house. There, you don't see, obviously she's like, hello, and then there's a loud gasp. We smash cut to later with her talking to the police.
Maybe have
explaining that she saw 2 dead bodies in there. You know, that kind of thing.
Maybe her doing a blood-curdling scream or something.
Something along those lines, yeah.
You could do the 911 call. Oh, that would be so fun to put together a 911 call.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
And she's like panicking and...
Yeah. No, this would have been, I think, whenever I find a story that has potential for Midnight Marinara, usually I take some liberties with the adaptation to try and give some of the characters a little more personality too. And again, I feel like this is a story that has the potential in adaptation to be stronger. So I hope the movie is a good adaptation of it, because I could see this as had I discovered this, if this was the kind of story I would have read a few years ago, I definitely would have considered it for Midnight Marinara and probably would have done the thing I usually do where I would have tentatively asked if I could do an adaptation of it. But again, this was written this year, and as of this year, Midnight Marinara is now on if a story comes to me and I want to do it approach.
Yeah.
This came out in January of 2019, so very recent.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us for November's read. It was an interesting one, but
yeah.
We're going to do something a little more different for the next one, and actually going to be in a completely different location.
Okay.
Our next novel is going to be 5 Midnights by Davia, Cardinal. An interesting tale that takes place in Puerto Rico, and it's a young adult novel. So,
okay,
I think it's meant for teens and young adults, but I think it'll be an interesting.
There's some good young adult novels out there that I've enjoyed, and I know people who are young adult writers. I think that genre gets a lot of flack, but I think it's worth looking into.
Absolutely. So, if you guys want to read along, go to check out your local library or
libraries are the best.
Yes,
support your libraries.
Yes, please support your libraries. Also,
having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card.
I've got on my library card, I put darkly lit stickers.
Yay!
Oh, I like that.
I like that too. Oh, that's a good idea. I need to actually
decorate our library cards.
Well, I need to get a new library card.
Oh, you do?
Well, have you seen my library card? I've destroyed it.
Oh no, I haven't.
It's basically because it's on my keychain and it's falling apart.
Oh, good point.
So I definitely need a new one. Mm-hmm. But yeah, thank you for joining us here on Darkly Lit. Please listen to our other podcasts on Creative Horror Network, such as you guys can plug your podcast.
Undercooked Analysis is back. It's going to be happening once every other week now. So expect more of us looking at original fiction submitted by listeners, where we critique in our usual candid, nasty, terrible, but completely loving and caring way at the same time somehow. Midnight Marinara just dropped a new episode, which is part of a new trend where I promise I will not let a year go by without at least one episode coming out. It's an episode written by me and fellow creative horror creator Alan Cheney called The Fall Board. Well worth checking out if you like diegetic piano music. I quite enjoyed putting that one together, and it was a long time in the making, so that's worth a look.
And the Witching Hour podcast is still a thing. We just cover a variety of whatever the hell we want, honestly, is what it's come down to. It's all horror related, and most of it is sometimes kind of gay, but we have a lot of fun doing it, and check it out if you just want to hear really just a bunch of nonsense and serial killer talk and fangirling.
Works for me. I enjoy the show. I'm looking forward to its spin-off, The Shipping Manifest, where all you do is talk about all your ships.
Oh, man.
I actually genuinely like The Witching Hour. It's in terms of like the podcasts on creative horror, it's like one of my top ones.
Thank you.
It's like one of my top two. So
we try to have fun. So
it's clear when you listen to it that they're having fun. So give it a listen.
It is awesome. Again, thank you for joining us, and we better be careful to walk home tonight because we don't want to be caught by a Wendigo.
Maybe we should.
I'm gonna go start my part time as a delivery pizza boy. Wish me luck, guys.
Perfect.
Good luck.
Oh yeah. So yeah, be careful out there. If anybody orders a large Hawaiian pizza, don't worry, that's us.
We're disgusting people. We are the true monsters, apparently.
Hey, let's not blow the candles out. We're gonna need these if we're going to avoid Wendigos tonight.
Yeah. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.